And welcome back to Forbes Sports Money. We are covering the big media deals going down, and the Phillies have a new TV deal. So, Scott, give us the nuts and bolts of that and what you think it means for the Phillies.
Yeah, just reported in the last few weeks here. It's $2.5 billion over 25 years. Follows close on the heels of some other major local media rights deals that have been done in Major League Baseball. The Dodgers, the Astros, the Rangers, the Angels, and the Phillies fell right in line here.
All right, so the numbers are obviously, what, double what they were making? How do you think that impacts the club?
It's a double. Their annual rights fee was reported right now at about $35 million. The average rights fee in this new deal is going to be about $100 million. However, it's not $100 million straight line. Usually there's about a 3% escalator built into these transactions. So back of the envelope, it looks like it starts at somewhere between $60 and $70 million and will escalate to $140 or $150 million per year by the end of the contract.
And they're going to own 25% of the network, which is huge because the dividend payments that the teams get, the team owners from the regional sports network, are not subject to baseball's revenue sharing, which the right fees are. So I think that's a big added value to this deal.
Now, we do know the Dodgers deal, when you look at all the charts for the regional sports networks, is off the charts. I mean, it's a little over $8 billion. But where does the number for the Phillies kind of fall in line with what you expected?
About right where you would expect it. Usually when you think about these deals, you can look at the size of the media market. So Los Angeles is the second largest media market in the country. Philadelphia is number 4. Now, it's a pretty big drop-off from the size of Los Angeles to Philadelphia. Pretty big drop-off in terms of the brand recognition, frankly, nationally for the Dodgers versus Philadelphia as well. But this is a nice transaction for the Phillies. It's going to bring some real stability to their revenue base for 25 years. And as Mike said, you've got the equity component there, too. So if the network does better than expected, they have the ability to receive some of the cash flows and the distributions beyond just the rights fees.
What's your sense of how the Phillies deal, and as Bob mentioned, the Dodgers deal earlier, could impact the Cubs? Because the Cubs sort of have this tricky situation where WGN, that deal for television, which is broadcast TV, has 1 year left, and then they have a Comcast deal, which I think goes through 2019. So they're trying to construct something where they could kind of start it sooner rather than later, this new deal. You know, the Cubs are kind of a great brand. They're the lovable losers, you know, but at the same time, they have a pretty big national following. I'm thinking, what, $200 million if, you know, somewhere between the Dodgers and the Phillies?
It's an interesting question. So Los Angeles is the number 2 media market in the country. Philadelphia is number 4. So we have some pretty good comparable transactions here for the Cubs. To me, the Cubs probably look more like Los Angeles than Philadelphia, just in terms of the brand recognition and what they mean to the city. So if the Philadelphia Phillies are at $100 million a year, the Dodgers were in excess of $300 million a year in terms of their rights fee. You know, $200 million for the Cubs plus or minus for 81 home games is probably a pretty good number.
And we should say the Ricketts family, which owns the Cubs, they have a 25% ownership stake in the RSN in Chicago, so there's good value there for them coming from equity as well.
Yes, there is. Yeah.
You know, it's interesting, too. You brought up the fact that the Cubs are on more than just one network. One of the reasons why they have that national following is because they were originally on the superstation, WGN, which they still are, and now the Cubs could use that in a way against WGN and say, look, we'll start our own network or we'll do something different and pull all the games from you. There's leverage there.
Absolutely. And speaking of leverage, you know, what do you think? You're talking about the leverage with going back to the NFL and CBS and how the NFL could use the other networks as leverage there and the 2 channels. Is there some of that here, too, with Chicago, where you have WGN and also Comcast, where the Cubs really have 2 to choose from here and could play one off the other?
I think the answer is absolutely yes. Again, entrepreneurs and people that negotiate these major contracts love optionality because it gives you negotiating leverage. So it's WGM, it's Comcast, and then the third option, of course, is that they can start their own network. Now, part of the challenge for the Cubs that the Phillies didn't face is that they do have 2 teams in Chicago versus Philadelphia, which happens to be the largest market with only 1 baseball team. But the Cubs are far and away the stronger brand in Chicago. So to me, they've got a lot of flexibility, a lot of leverage, great fans. And, of course, they're investing in their ballpark right now, too. So they're undergoing this entire renovation much the way that the Red Sox did. And so I think you're going to see a real rejuvenation in that franchise. And I think it's going to play out and produce meaningful results for them in terms of the media as well.
I have to get some of that optionality. You know, I got to start bringing that into my stuff, too.
Yeah. How do I get more optionality, right?